Ever found yourself unable to let go of a bad investment simply because you've already put so much into it? Welcome to the world of the sunk cost fallacy. It's a cognitive bias that can play tricks on your decision-making process. You see, our brains have a hard time accepting that we've wasted resources, whether it's time, money, or even emotional energy. So we continue to invest in lost causes, hoping that things will turn around. But here's the kicker. The more we invest, the harder it becomes to walk away. This is because our past investments, which are already lost and irrecoverable, start to hold an illogical sway over our future decisions. It's like throwing good money after bad, as the old saying goes. The key to overcoming the sunk cost fallacy is to recognize it. Take a step back. Evaluate your decisions not on what you've already spent, but on what you stand to gain or lose in the future. Remember, past investments can't be recovered. They're sunk. Don't let them cloud your future decisions. Can the same information lead you to different conclusions? Absolutely, if it's framed differently. This is what we call the framing effect. It's a fascinating cognitive bias that shows how our brains can interpret the same data in completely different ways, based merely on how it's presented. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine you're told that a particular type of surgery has a 90% survival rate. Sounds promising, doesn't it? But what if you were told that the same surgery has a 10% mortality rate? Suddenly, it doesn't sound so appealing, even though the information is exactly the same. In both cases, the numbers are identical, but the framed context changes our perception. The framing effect is a powerful reminder of how our decisions can be influenced, often subconsciously. So, the next time you're making a decision, always try to look at the bigger picture and not be swayed by how information is framed. Why do we tend to remember the bad more than the good? It's a question that's puzzled many, and the answer lies in an innate psychological phenomenon known as the negativity bias. This bias is the tendency we humans have to focus more on negative events or information than positive ones. Picture this. You've had a great day out, you've laughed, you've smiled, but then something small goes wrong. A little hiccup, a minor inconvenience, and suddenly that's all you can think about, right? That's negativity bias in action. Our brains are wired this way due to evolution. Back in the day, paying attention to potential threats was a matter of survival. But in the modern world, this bias can often lead us to overlook the good and dwell on the bad, clouding our judgment and skewing our perspective. Don't let negativity bias cloud your judgment. Positive events are just as important. Ever felt uncomfortable when your beliefs are challenged? That's what we call cognitive dissonance, a psychological phenomenon that arises when we're caught between two conflicting beliefs, or when our actions don't align with our values. Imagine you're an ardent environmentalist, but you just can't resist the convenience of a gas-guzzling car. The conflict between your belief in environmental conservation and your behavior generates a certain discomfort. It's like your mind is a tightrope walker trying to balance between two towering beliefs. When they're at odds, you feel an internal tug-of-war. This discomfort is not necessarily a bad thing, though. It nudges us to reconcile our beliefs or change our behavior, creating an opportunity for self-improvement and learning. So the next time you feel that inner conflict, don't shy away from it. Explore it. Question it. It's your mind telling you there's room for growth, for understanding, for change. Embrace the discomfort. It's a sign of growth and learning. Why do we value our possessions more than if they belong to someone else? This question brings us to the fascinating realm of the endowment effect. It's a cognitive bias where we tend to assign a higher value to things simply because we own them. Imagine you own a vintage car. Now there might be an identical car out there, same make, same model, same year, but you'd probably still value yours more, right? That's the endowment effect at play. Ownership makes us attach emotions and memories to objects, inflating their perceived value beyond their objective worth. We start to see our possessions as extensions of ourselves, making it harder to part with them. This can lead to irrational decisions like refusing a good deal or holding on to things we don't need. So next time you find yourself overvaluing something just because it's yours, remember this: value should be objective, not based on who owns an item. Why do we give more weight to recent events when making decisions? Now let's delve into an interesting psychological phenomenon known as recency bias. This bias manifests when we give more importance to the events that occurred recently when making decisions. It's like our brain's natural spotlight, focusing more on the here and now than the there and then. This is due to the fact that recent information is easier to recall. Our minds are constantly processing information, and it's the fresh data that's most readily available. But here's the catch. While it's efficient, it's not always effective. In some situations, this can lead to skewed decision-making as we overlook older but potentially more relevant information. So, next time you find yourself making a decision based on just the recent events, take a moment. Consider the bigger picture and the historical context. Remember, the past is also important when making informed decisions. Ever struggle to understand another's feelings, especially when you're in a different emotional state? Well, welcome to the empathy gap, a psychological bias that often hinders our understanding of others. It's like trying to remember the pain of a stubbed toe on a day you're feeling great, or attempting to comprehend joy when you're drowning in sorrow. Our emotional state significantly influences our ability to empathize. When we're on cloud nine, it's challenging to fathom the depths of someone else's despair. Similarly, when we're down in the dumps, the happiness of others can seem alien, almost unattainable. The empathy gap isn't just about emotions, though. It can also occur with physical states, like hunger and fatigue. Ever tried to understand why someone is so irritable when you're well-fed and rested? That's the empathy gap at play. The key to bridging this gap is self-awareness. Recognize your emotional state and understand its influence. Try to step outside your own emotions to truly understand others. Why do we resist change and prefer to keep things the way they are? This question leads us to the concept of status quo bias. Simply put, it's our inherent preference for the current state of affairs, a kind of psychological comfort zone where we feel safe and secure. The problem with status quo bias is that it can hinder progress. It's like being stuck in a comfortable armchair, not wanting to get up, even though there's a whole world out there to explore. It's our brain's way of maintaining a steady course, fearing that any change could lead to potential risks. But here's the thing. This bias can make us miss out on opportunities for growth and improvement. It's crucial to understand that change, though it may be uncomfortable at first, often leads to progress and innovation. So don't let the fear of change and the comfort of the status quo keep you stuck in that armchair. Change can be good. Don't let the status quo hold you back. Why do we judge others by their actions, but ourselves by our circumstances? This rhetorical question introduces us to the concept of the fundamental attribution error. It's a cognitive bias that often leads us down a path of unfair judgment. We're all guilty of it. When someone else makes a mistake, we're quick to pin it on their character, their personality, or their inherent nature. But when we stumble, we attribute it to external factors, the environment, or the situation. It's a way of protecting our ego, preserving our self-image. However, this bias can cloud our understanding of others, painting them in an unjust light. It can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and strained relationships. It's essential to be aware of this bias and consciously work to overcome it. So the next time you're quick to attribute someone else's actions to their character, pause. Consider the circumstances. Remember, everyone has a story. Try to understand before you judge. Why is it so hard to explain something we know to someone who doesn't? This pondering leads us to the concept of the curse of knowledge, a cognitive bias that can make our communication less effective. It's the paradoxical idea that the more we know about a subject, the harder it becomes for us to explain it to someone less familiar. Think about it. You're a master of your craft, brimming with knowledge and expertise. But when you try to explain it to a beginner, you struggle. You see, our brains have a sneaky habit of forgetting that not everyone shares our understanding. We assume that others have the same background knowledge, leading to information gaps and confusion. The key to overcoming this curse is empathy and patience. Take a step back, put yourself in the other person's shoes, and guide them through the learning process. After all, knowledge is a gift. Share it wisely.